Hey there, scary story fanatics. Welcome back to Cleaving Thought from Bone with your host, Sociopathic. Tonight, we get back to the happiest place on Earth, a place where only true terror resides for the rest of us. So, sit back, relax, and get ready for a sequel you might not have expected. Steamboat, Killie, the next sequence. The static never truly left Mick. Not since that night in the museum, when the world fractured into a nightmare of monochrome malice. Even now, months later, in the flickering fluorescent glow of his dingy apartment, he could hear it. A faint, high-pitched whine beneath the hum of the city. A ghostly echo of the malevolent cartoon mouse. The whistling. He ran a hand over his jaw, feeling the phantom pressure of a tiny mallet. They hadn't killed him, not outright. They'd left him. A chilling thought, a purpose unknown, a terror that gnawed at his sanity far more effectively than any immediate death. The museum, by some miracle or perhaps by design, had been a dead end for the authorities. No bodies, no definitive proof of the impossible. Just an empty building, a broken window, and the whispered rumors of a very peculiar and very brief police investigation that quickly closed due to lack of evidence. Mick had escaped the building, but not the memory, nor the lingering threat. He'd lost everything. Donnie, Max, Peter, Daisy May, his crew, his friends. And for what? For a client who, after the incident, had vanished like smoke, never retrieving his prized animated relics. Mick had tried to contact him, desperate, but the number was disconnected, the address a fabrication. It left Mick with two burning desires: revenge and answers. Primarily answers. He spent weeks, then months, digging into forgotten archives, chasing obscure art collectors, even lurking in online forums dedicated to animation, esoteria, and urban legends. His quest was singular: to understand the black and white entities that had decimated his team. He dismissed the impossible. It had to be some elaborate, horrifying technological marvel. A new kind of automaton, perhaps controlled by a deranged genius. But the way they moved, the impossible elasticity, the sound of their silent whistle. It defied logic. His only lead, a whisper of a name from an old, forgotten forum, spoke of the Inkwell Institute, a mythical, secretive organization rumored to have dabbled in the very genesis of animation, pushing the boundaries of what was merely drawn. Most dismissed it as fiction, the ramblings of old-school animators high on turpentine. But Mick, having seen the impossible, clung to it, like a drowning man to driftwood. His research led him to a small, unassuming town in the Rust Belt, Oakhaven. Once a bustling industrial hub, it was now a skeletal landscape of abandoned factories and forgotten dreams. And right in the heart of its decaying downtown, nestled between a boarded-up diner and a crumbling theater, stood the Inkwell Institute. It wasn't a grand research facility, but a modest, almost quaint building. Its brick facade faded, its windows dark. A single, tarnished brass plaque beside the heavy oak door simply read, The Inkwell Institute, established 1928. Mick staked it out for a week, sleeping in his beat-up car, living on stale donuts and lukewarm coffee. No one went in. No one came out. It was a tomb that hummed with a low, almost imperceptible energy when he pressed his ear to the wall. He felt the static again, stronger here, a prickling sensation on his skin that made his hairs on his arms stand on end. He needed help. He couldn't go in alone, not again. The memory of Donnie's elongated neck, of Max's gurgling screams, was too fresh. He thought of his old contact, Alara Vance. Alara was a master of information, a digital ghost, capable of finding anything or anyone for a price. She was cynical, sharp-tongued, and fiercely pragmatic. She wouldn't believe him about the cartoon mice, not at first, but she'd chase a lead if the money was right. Mick called her, his voice tight. Alara, it's Mick. I've got a job. Not a heist, not exactly. More of an investigation. Alara's voice, sharp and cool over the phone, cut through the static in his mind. Mick? I thought you were dead or in a hole somewhere after the museum fiasco. The word was messy. It was worse than messy, Alara. I'll explain everything. I need your skills. Deep dive, recon, and maybe someone to watch my back. He told her a sanitized version, enough to pique her interest without sounding like a raving lunatic. He focused on the missing client, the unique nature of the items that they were after, the complete anomaly of the museum, and his new lead on the Inkwell Institute. He promised her a cut that made her pause. Okay, then you say? And this Inkwell Institute is supposed to be the source of what exactly? She queried, her voice laced with skepticism, but a hint of curiosity. Answers, Mick insisted. And something else. Something valuable, if I'm right. Valuable and terrifying. Alara, after some negotiation, agreed. She was pragmatic, the money was good, and Mick had always delivered. She arrived 3 days later, a sleek black drone bag slung over her shoulder, her laptop already humming with code. She was younger than Mick, perhaps early 30s, with sharp, intelligent eyes that missed nothing and a no-nonsense attitude. So, the ghost story, she said, looking at the faded Inkwell Institute building through binoculars. You're telling me cartoons came to life? Mick recounted the full, unfiltered horror. The rubbery limbs, the impossible strength, the forced laughter, the static. He described the deaths of his crew, omitting the most visceral details, knowing Alara preferred facts over gore. He saw the flicker of disbelief in her eyes, quickly replaced by professional calculation. Remarkable, she murmured, lowering the binoculars. Or, more likely, a sophisticated hallucinatory gas combined with advanced animatronics. The museum had no security footage that night, just static. It wasn't gas, Alara. It was real, and it wasn't animatronics. They were alive, and they moved like nothing from this world. Alara just nodded. Her lips pursed. All right, let's see what this Inkwell Institute has to hide. My systems tell me that this place was an animation studio in the 30s, and then a research facility for optical illusions. Then it just went dark in the late 60s. No records of who bought it, who owns it now, nothing. A black hole of data. That night, they moved. Alara's drone, a silent, agile contraption no bigger than her hand, buzzed around the Institute, its infrared vision piercing the darkness, scanning for heat signatures, weak points, anything. Mick, armed with his trusty crowbar and a heavy-duty bolt cutter, followed. His nerves frayed. Every shadow, a potential lurking terror. Thermal scan clean, Alara whispered into the comms. No human presence, no active security systems, just a persistent energy signature. Low level, but constant. Like a giant battery. They found a weak point in the back. A rusted service door. The bolt cutter sliced through the ancient lock with a groan of tortured metal. The air inside was thick with the scent of dust, decay, and something else. A faint, sweet smell, like old ink and ozone. Alara moved with practiced ease, her tablet glowing softly, projecting a topographic map of the interior. Looks like a typical olfactory layout. Offices up front, workshops in the back, a large central area that may have been a production floor. They moved through the silent, decaying corridors. The offices were untouched for decades. Typewriters covered in shrouds of dust, calendars stuck on 1968. In one, Mick found a faded blueprint for a device labeled Chromatic Harmonizer. Doesn't sound like a cartoon producer, Mick muttered, his hand hovering over the dusty schematic. No, sounds like something designed to manipulate light, Alara replied, her attention fixed on a faint glow emanating from beneath a reinforced door at the end of the corridor. And that's where the energy signature is strongest. They reached the door. It was made of thick steel, secured by multiple deadbolts and a heavy, rusted padlock. This is it, Mick breathed. This is where they kept them. Alara nodded, pulling out a specialized lockpicking kit. Her nimble fingers worked quickly, the metallic clicks echoing unnaturally loud in the silence. The last bolt clunked, and the door swung open with a slow, agonizing creak, revealing a blast of cold, stale air and a pulsating, ethereal light from within. The room was vast, circular, and dominated by a monstrous, gleaming machine in its center. It was a dizzying array of lenses, prisms, copper coils, and humming vacuum tubes, all encased in a polished black material that seemed to absorb all light. At its core, a swirling vortex of pure, achromatic light. A silent, colorless maelstrom that pulsed with an otherworldly energy. The air around it crackled with static. What in God's name? Alara whispered, utterly awestruck, her pragmatic facade momentarily shattered. The chromatic harmonizer, Mick said, recognizing the elements from the blueprint. But what does it do? Around the edges of the room, on pedestals, stood dozens of objects under glass domes. Mick's blood ran cold. They were original animation cells, hand-drawn frames of classic characters, a beaming, pie-eyed mouse in red shorts, a grinning cat, a mischievous rabbit, a happy-go-lucky dog, each one frozen in a cheerful pose, but something about them felt wrong, subtly distorted. Their lines seemed to shift, and their colors, though monochrome, felt too intense. They're animation cells, Alara breathed, her eyes wide as she examined one. Originals, from the Golden Age. Then she noticed it. On the floor, leading from one of the pedestals, was a faint, almost invisible trail. It was a trail of dried, black ink, like something had oozed off the cell and crawled away. Her eyes widened. Mick, look. Before Mick could react, the humming of the central machine intensified and the achromatic vortex began to churn faster. The static in the air grew palpable, stinging their skin, making their teeth ache. From behind the pedestals, from the shadows clinging to the circular walls, emerged two figures. They were larger than before, perhaps 7 feet tall, but still impossibly thin, stretched and elongated. One of them was a male mouse from the museum, his white face now marred by a faint, shifting gray, like perpetual television static. The other was the female, her polka dot dress now a swirling vortex of black and white, her bow a sharp, angular protrusion. Their movements jerky, unnatural, like frames skipping in an old film. The silent whistling began, piercing Mick's very skull. They're not cartoons, Alara gasped, her voice trembling, finally understanding. They're made of ink. They're what happens when drawings transcend. The male mouse lunged, its impossibly long arm extending like a rubber band. Alara reacted with surprising speed, pulling a compact stun gun from her belt and firing. The bolt of electricity hit the creature, causing it to distort, rippling like water. But it merely reformed, twitching and continuing its charge. Stun guns won't work, Mick yelled, grabbing a heavy metal pipe that lay near a workbench. They're not alive in a way that we understand. The female mouse moved next, not directly at them, but towards the glowing central machine. Its eyes, hollow black dots, seemed to fixate on the achromatic light. As it approached, the light intensified, pulsing in sync with the creature's movements. Mick swung the pipe at the male mouse, aiming for its head. The impact was sickeningly soft, like hitting thick rubber. The creature merely wobbled, its head snapping back to face him, a terrifyingly wide, unblinking smile plastered on its face. It began to laugh, a dry, rasping sound, like a film reel grinding to a halt. Alara, realizing that the stun gun was useless, scrambled for her drone. "We need to shut that thing down," she yelled, pointing at the chromatic harmonizer. "It's feeding them, or making them." The male mouse was on Mick, its impossibly strong grip like steel bands around his arm, twisting, pulling him off balance. Mick felt a searing pain as his elbow popped. But he held on, his mind flashing back to Donnie, to Max. Not again. Suddenly the female mouse let out a high-pitched, almost mechanical shriek. Its body convulsed. The black ink began to bleed from its eyes, its mouth staining its white face. It stumbled towards the chromatic harmonizer, its movements more frantic, less controlled. "What's happening?" Mick grunted, struggling against the male mouse. Alara, now at the machine's control panel, pounded on it, trying to decipher the arcane symbols. It's unstable. The energy, it's overloading." The female mouse reached the chromatic harmonizer. With a desperate, jerky movement, it pressed its ink-bleeding hands into the swirling achromatic light. A wave of raw, unfiltered energy surged through the room, throwing Mick and the male mouse violently against the wall. The male mouse screamed, a sound of pure digital agony, its form flickering, pixelating. Mick hit the cold floor, his arms screaming in protest. He looked up, his vision blurry. The female mouse was consumed by the achromatic light, its form dissolving, melting into the swirling vortex, its silent screams swallowed by the growing roar of the machine. The sheer force of the energy surge shook the entire building, dust raining down from the ceiling. Alara, dazed, had been thrown back from the control panel. She lay motionless for a moment, then slowly pushed herself up, clutching her head. It's destabilizing the field," she whispered, her voice weak. "The light, it's reacting to her, breaking down. It's too much for it." The male mouse, still flickering and convulsing, stumbled towards Alara, its movements jerky and desperate, its black eyes fixated on her. It was enraged, its form tearing at the seams. It was coming for her, for the one who had been near the machine that had just consumed its counterpart. Mick, despite the agony in his arm, knew he had to act. He grabbed a heavy metal tool, a wrench from the workbench, and pushed himself up, adrenaline coursing through his veins. The male mouse was almost on Alara, its stretched hand reaching for her throat. Alara, still disoriented, fumbled for something, anything, in her bag. Mick lunged, bringing the heavy wrench down with all his remaining strength onto the back of the male mouse's head. The creature staggered. A horrible, tearing sound emanated from its distorted form. It turned to Mick, its face contorting into an impossible, stretched rictus of rage, its monochrome skin bubbling. It lunged back at Mick, its hands closing around his injured arm, squeezing. Mick screamed, the pain searing. The creature's eyes burned into his, not with malice, but with a terrifying, primal need. It wasn't just killing. It was trying to absorb him, to make him part of the static, part of its ink-driven reality. But the wrench strike had done something. The creature's form continued to warp, its lines blurring, its black and white skin dissolving into static. It was unraveling. The achromatic light from the chromatic harmonizer, now wildly unstable, pulsed violently, casting chaotic shadows that danced on the walls. Alara, now more alert, noticed the effect of the light on the mouse. "Mick, the light! It's reacting to the distortion! Focus it!" she screamed, pointing at the chromatic harmonizer. "The lenses! Adjust the lenses!" Mick, fighting through the crushing grip of the mouse, glanced at the massive machine. He saw a series of large, rotating lenses that seemed to be focusing the chaotic light. He understood. The mouse was made of that static, that chaotic energy. If he could amplify the instability, focus the raw, uncontained light onto the creature, it might tear it apart. With a superhuman effort, Mick ripped his arm free from the creature's grasp, the pain blinding him. He stumbled towards the chromatic harmonizer, the male mouse stumbling after him, shrieking in digital fury. He ignored the creature's advances, his eyes fixed on the controls. He remembered the blueprint. He slammed his good hand onto the ancient, rusted levers, twisting them wildly. The lenses groaned, shuddered, and began to rotate, focusing the wildly pulsating achromatic light into a tighter, more intense beam directly at the center of the room. The air shrieked, the building groaned, and the static became unbearable, filling every corner of the room. The male mouse, caught in the direct beam of the now weaponized achromatic light, let out a final, ear-splitting scream. Its form began to pixelate at an accelerating rate, its black outlines stretching, snapping like rubber bands, its white body disintegrating into shimmering static, and then into nothingness, leaving behind only the overwhelming smell of ozone and burnt ink. The chromatic harmonizer, having unleashed such raw, destabilized energy, began to crackle and spark violently. Its vacuum tubes glowed white-hot, then burst with loud pops. The swirling achromatic light flickered, dimmed, and then vanished, plunging the room into near darkness, save for the emergency lights Alara had activated on her tablet. Mick collapsed, gasping, his injured arm throbbing, his mind reeling from the sheer impossibility of what he had just witnessed. He looked at Alara, who was slowly getting to her feet, her face pale, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and awe. "It's over," Mick croaked, barely audible. "They're gone." Alara walked slowly towards where the male mouse had been, shining her tablet's light on the empty space. Nothing. Not a trace. She then turned her gaze to the still glowing remnants of the chromatic harmonizer, its machinery smoking, its lenses shattered. "Gone?" she said, her voice a whisper. "Mick, we just witnessed reality being unmade, and then remade. They weren't just animated. They were violations of physics. An equation, a sequence made manifest, and then unmade." She looked at the pedestals where the original animation cells stood, now glowing with an eerie, faint luminescence that pulsed faintly, like a dying heartbeat. "The Inkwell Institute wasn't just making cartoons," Alara continued, her mind already racing, trying to process the impossible. "They were experimenting with the very fabric of perception, trying to pull something from the realm of pure concept into our sequential reality. They were trying to give drawings existence." Mick didn't answer. He simply stared out at the empty space where the male mouse had been, then at the smoking remains of the machine, and finally at the unnervingly vibrant, glowing animation cells. He had his answers, and they were far more terrifying than any monster. The universe, he now knew, had cracks in its foundations, places where the sequential could be invaded by the conceptual, where thought could become flesh, where ink could become life. And he, Mick, had stumbled into one of them. He had destroyed the machine, but the knowledge, the understanding, had imprinted itself on him. The static wasn't gone. It was in his head. A constant hum. A reminder that the world was far stranger and far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. The only question now was, what would the next sequence be? Just goes to show you, when one sequence ends, another begins. So while you prepare for the inevitable, don't forget to stop by again next Saturday for more gore galore. And until then, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications so I can catch you all again next Saturday. Social media can be very unpredictable, especially regarding horror content. If this content gets removed, all new content will be simultaneously presented on various websites provided in the description to this video. Make sure to follow me in other digital spaces so that you never miss out on the terror. Also, if you like this video, make sure to leave a comment and hit the like button. It helps the channel a lot. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy what's here, consider hitting that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you never miss an upload. Writing is a dream of mine, and it's all of you that make that dream come true.